All right. Greetings and welcome to episode 21 of One Bottle Each. I'm thrilled to be joined by Kim Longbottom. She is the owner of Vintage Longbottom. Kim, thank you for being here.
Oh, most welcome, Gabe. It's lovely to be here and to be chatting to you again.
I know it's always better when it's in person, but we do what we can right now.
Yeah, for sure.
How are things in Australia? Vis-a-vis COVID, are they mostly back to normal, partially back to normal? How are you guys doing?
It just depends. It's kind of state by state, but mostly back to normal. I think the challenge for us is getting a higher percentage of vaccinations. Recently had a bit of an outbreak in Melbourne or Victoria, the state. But they seem to have, even though they'll have an outbreak, they seem to jump on it fairly quickly and shut it down. So, yeah, we're getting there. I guess by the end of the year, things will be opening up a little bit more. I think we can travel freely to New Zealand now, and they're talking about Singapore as well. So that'll be nice for families to reconnect.
No doubt. Are things open in terms of cellar doors, people visiting and tasting, or are you not there yet?
Yeah, in South Australia, everything's pretty much normal. I think with crowds, there may be some limits like 150 or something like that. But there's really no restrictions. You just have to, whenever you enter a public place or even your local grocery store, you have to just check in with your QR code on your phone. So then it's traceable. If there is an outbreak, they can trace everyone, their movements. So that I think that's been a really helpful tool for the government to be using if there has been, some cases pop up from time to time.
Sure. I mean, it certainly seems, anecdotally from everything I've heard that in Australia and New Zealand, both are two of the countries that from the outset handled it the best.
Well, it helps being an island. Well, we're a continent in Australia technically, but yeah, any COVID that we see bobbing up now is really just people returning from overseas. So yeah, people repatriating. And some states, so the quarantining is run by each state, and some states have been better at it than others. So in South Australia, our Premier seems to be onto it fairly well. So we've kept everything.
Well, that's great. I mean, it's similar here too. Some states have done better than others and have taken things, a bit more seriously or more stringently than others as well. So sounds similar in that way anyway. So you've been in the wine business quite a while now, and a couple of years ago you transitioned from the Henry's Drive as your sort of main brand and your identity to Vintage Longbottom. Tell me a bit about that transition, what led to it, and what it means to you.
I guess the catalyst was I turned 50 and Margot and I traveled to France for a month. And it was just that, having that month to reflect on the previous 10 years, which had been fairly challenging for a number of reasons. And I think just getting away for a month, having that clarity, looking back, looking forward. And Margot was of the age where, she could start joining the company in terms of, having an active role in the company. She's still studying and she does some part-time work with me, helping out with marketing. But for me, it was like, it's time for the next chapter. I guess, things are vastly different to what they were when my late husband and I founded the company in 1998. So yeah, for me, it was about refreshing everything. We moved regions as well. So that was really a logistic thing for us. We were both living in Adelaide and have been since 2011. So I just thought, I wanted to make some more contemporary style of wines, and I thought with Adelaide Hills is kind of where that's going on in terms of fruit sourcing and the more modern style of Chardonnays and Syrahs and Sauvignon Blancs seem to be coming out of the Adelaide Hills in terms of South Australia zone. And then for the Henry's Drive, I mean, that's been such a big part of it's been very much a style driven. Yeah, so it's really been driven on consistency of style. So I looked at what region I thought that we could continue the style and develop a little bit more. So I thought McLaren Vale was quite similar in terms of climate. So I thought we'd head to McLaren Vale as a source for the fruit for the Henry's Drive. So we can just continue with that house style of wine.
Cool. So, you mentioned Margot, your daughter, and she's, your partner in the business. She's been in the wine business in a sense her whole life because you've been running this winery for all these years. Did you have the sense that she would want to be in the wine business with you, or did you think that because she was so ensconced with it, with you, that she would want to run away and do anything but be in the wine business?
I always had a sense that she would want to be involved, but never pushed it. It was always, she liked being around the food, the wine scene, meeting the people, the travel, obviously. That's always exciting for younger kids. And even now, once her studies have completed, which is the end of next year, I think, I said to her, you should just travel for the next few years and work out, what you'd like to do after that. And, I feel confident that she'll come back into the company, but I think it's important that she gets away as well. And she's pretty keen to do some overseas vintages with some friends like Spain, Portugal, Italy, Argentina. So, yeah, I just think that it's really important that she gets away and experiences a bit more of the world before she sort of comes back in a full-time role into the business. So
makes sense to have that outside influence to see what else is out there, and then perhaps bring some of that back home, right?
Yeah, hope so.
So one of the wines under the vintage Longbottom label is the one I selected for tonight, which is the aged Sauvignon Blanc. And I selected it because honestly, last time you and I met in person in New York City, I had tasted it, I believe, for the first time, and I was really knocked out with the balance in it and the just the green notes in it and the savories, and I just thought it was really a fantastic Sauvignon Blanc. So I thought I wanted to try it again.
Oh, good. And you have the 19 vintage?
I do.
Great.
I do.
So this is the second. This is the second Sauvignon Blanc that we've made to date. I grew up in Marlborough, New Zealand, and I guess it was inevitable that I would eventually make a Sauvignon Blanc. And so the Adelaide Hills, I think, makes particularly good Sauvignon Blanc. But what I wanted to do was not make that kind of leaner style, reminiscent of the Marlborough style. I wanted to make a more sophisticated, food-friendly, kind of more European style of Sauvignon Blanc. So yeah, I'm really happy with it. It's very small production. We source the fruit from a really great grower in Lenswood, which is like a sub-region of the Adelaide Hills.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what you just said about it being a food-friendly wine, and certainly not in the Marlborough style. I think of the Marlborough style, among other things, it's often quite extroverted on the nose, and this is not that. It's got a lovely nose, but it's really everything here is in balance, and it's just and it's also sort of a gentle Sauvignon Blanc.
Yeah, it does. It has that lovely soft kind of mouthfeel. The texture is really lovely and soft, and it's still the sort of wine. It's kind of crisp enough that you can have a glass whilst you're cooking dinner, but also then have another glass while you're having a nice fish or chicken dish, or anything really. I think it goes with most foods. I mean, apart from red meat, but
yeah, no doubt. It's got it's got a fine acidity there, but the acidity, as with doesn't, like some Sauvignon Blancs, doesn't really knock you in the face on the back end as it often can, and that again all lends itself to how well balanced I think it is, and just how even keeled it is.
Yeah, so we aged this wine in French oak, like puncheons, so you get that nice soft oak integration for around about 6 months. And it's not 6 months to the day. We just keep tasting it and having a look at how much oak has integrated into the wine, and then we go, okay, so that's it now. Let's pull it out. Let's bottle it. We like to bottle it kind of straight away, and then leave it in bottle for a few months before we release it.
And you mentioned, it's a small production. It's only 300 and something 6-pack cases. So that's also quite a change, from your older brand, in the sense that while you had some small production wines, you really had quite a few wines that you were making many, many cases of. So was that also part of what you were looking to do, to be a bit more towards the boutique side of things?
Yeah, I think so. Make it a little bit more manageable. I did, as you know, I had a volume brand that we were doing, tens of thousands of cases of. And that was part of my decision to kind of rebrand the wine, was to look at, exactly what I was doing with the portfolio. And volume brands are difficult to keep alive and to keep relevant. And I guess because I'm a small producer, my costs were probably higher than what some of the larger producers could do, and it just became extremely competitive in that price point. So I decided to sell that brand after having it in the marketplace for I guess 15 years, and just focus on more premium style brands, more regional focused, and a little less volume, that makes things a bit more manageable for me.
Yeah. And so in addition, we should mention, in addition to the Sauvignon Blanc, you've got under this label, a Chardonnay and a Shiraz.
Yes. Yeah, we do. Yeah. The Shiraz, we call it a Syrah. And I guess with the altitude in the Adelaide Hills, the Shirazes tend to be a bit more elegant. So most wine producers in the Adelaide Hills do call their wines Syrah versus Shiraz. And I think that's just reflective of the elegance and style that you're getting out of the Adelaide Hills fruit.
Great. And what are your plans beyond that? Do you intend to add more wines to the age line?
Yeah, I am this year. I'm adding, I already have a Sangiovese rosé. It's really tiny production, so hopefully you may see it in the market, perhaps in the next vintage or two. And then I'm also going to be adding 2 McLaren Vale wines at that price point and same branding. So it'll be a Shiraz and another wine that I'm pretty excited about. I'm calling it a medium dry red. So it'll be predominantly Cabernet, around about 50% Cabernet, and then Grenache and Shiraz.
Oh, cool. And that also will hit the market this year?
Yeah, we're about to bottle it, but again, tiny quantity, so we may not have enough to export this time, but yeah.
Well, baby steps.
Yeah, exactly.
Again, I just have to say how terrific this Sauvignon Blanc is. It's really beautiful. It's about $29.99 in the US, which I think is incredibly fairly priced for the elegance and quality in the bottle of this wine.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And then you selected for us the Henry's Drive 2017 Magnus Shiraz. So tell me a bit about this wine, and tell me why you thought we should taste this one tonight, or this morning, as it is for you.
This is our flagship wine. So Henry's Drive was named after the proprietor of the mail coach that used to drive through our property in the late 1800s. So that's why on the label you have, this is an old postage stamp from 1953. So it has like a Cobb & Co. Coach on there. So we wanted to, because this is the flagship wine, we also wanted to give it a name that meant something significant, because we've repackaged this in honor of my late husband, Mark. So we called it Magnus, which means great, and we think this is our greatest wine. So, this is, it was interesting transitioning from one vintage to another, because it was like logistically, from a winemaking perspective, blending. So how do we do that? Or what's the best way to execute, getting from like stock on hand. So what we did is blended Padthaway and McLaren Vale for this 17 vintage, which Magnus is. So we wanted to kind of have a transitional vintage where it showed, like, the previous vintage was very Padthaway. This is kind of like blending the two regions together. And then the subsequent vintage, which we just have bottled recently and will be released next year, is all about McLaren Vale. So with a wine like Magnus, that was my biggest concern with changing regions, was that we could replicate the greatness of that wine. So we've been lucky enough to source fruit from kind of like a sub-region of McLaren Vale that has more altitude. It's kind of higher up in the Vale, and really beautiful vineyards. We've been really lucky that we can access that fruit. So in terms of consistency of style, it's made in the same way. It spends about 22 months in new French puncheons, and then bottled and kept in bottle for about a year before we release it. So I'm just going to.
What I love here is this wine is certainly a big boy, but it's not too big. It is. It's got all this dark fruit. It's still really well balanced. It's. I guess one of the words would be brooding. It's just because of all the dark fruit, and it just really, really lovely. And there's a lot of depth of palate here, and really an excellent finish.
I think brooding is a great word, and it's actually one of the words I've chosen for the back label, because it does brood a lot, that wine, and you'll see if you pop it into a decanter, like, it just changes all the time, and it's big, but it's also got so much elegance. And I love the aromatics on this wine too. It's always like super aromatic.
Yeah, and obviously it is brooding, because you put it on your label. I had not read the back label, and also that word came to mind.
Right?
Yeah, no, it truly is, but it is really, really balanced, and like you said, the nose is big. It's really lovely. And it's always interesting to use a word like lovely or elegant for something that is still big shouldered, but it's all of those things at the same time.
Yeah. I'm pretty excited about where we're going in terms of just tweaking the style a little bit to have a bit more elegance, a little bit more texture in there with the McLaren Vale. And obviously, it's made in the same way that it always was when we were based in Padthaway, but you're getting some slight regional characteristics that are a little bit different. So you're getting some black olive and that chocolatey mocha character that you see in the McLaren Vale Shirazes, and that kind of mid-palate. So it's exciting to see this evolve from McLaren Vale.
Yeah, and also again, along with what you said, it's sort of a bit of a sour black fruit on the finish, as opposed to what sometimes you get on Shiraz is more of a still brighter, sweeter fruit. And this has got a little bit of that sour, which is just really great, which I think keeps that sort of balance and doesn't make it really the even bigger wine that Shiraz sometimes can be.
Yeah, I think minimal intervention, just letting this wine do its own thing. When it comes into the winery, we leave it on skins for 2 to 3 weeks, and then it's like gently pressed out and then put into barrel for secondary fermentation, and then aged for almost 2 years. So, but I like how expressive it is. Some of the wines kind of at that price point, I find they look quite extracted and tightly wound. I like the expression of this wine. It's soft, it's supple. It's like it's been made with soft hands.
All of that, and certainly quite ageable, which I think is also worth mentioning. The Sauvignon Blanc, which I'm sure you didn't make with the intention specifically of aging, but that thing has got a solid 7 or 8 years ahead of it at least, because it's so well balanced with fine acid.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I'm really happy with how that's aging. It was a bit of trial and error, but yeah, no, very happy with that. And I think we're almost sold out of the 19. So, and in the 20 vintage has been quite problematic for us. In the Adelaide Hills in particular, it was, well, statewide in South Australia, all the yields were very low. But the Adelaide Hills in particular, we had the bushfires that went through. So the fruit that we were buying got quite smoke tainted. So we actually rejected it. We haven't made any whites in 20, but we've made up for it in 21. So we're just coordinating the bottling of the Sauvignon Blanc for September. And then the Chardonnay will stay in barrel a little bit longer and be bottled in the new year.
Right. And yeah, the problem with fires, it seems like it's really become a global problem in certain regions of the world that just keeps repeating year after year. Is it something that you guys have seen over there a lot, or only a handful of years, or is it cyclical?
I don't know about cyclical. I think it's just, it's hard to pinpoint where and when. And I remember when we had the same time in the new year it was last year, wasn't it? Early 2020, when we had all those bushfires up and down the East Coast. And I remember talking to Dennis Krebs from Quintessential, and he said, "Looks like your whole country's on fire." And I said, it's a bit like when we're in drought, everyone thinks the whole country is in drought. So different areas are more susceptible to drought and bushfires. Adelaide Hills is, it has quite a few areas of national parks. So I guess there is a little bit more danger. McLaren Vale, for example, is mostly orchards and vineyards and cropping. So, perhaps doesn't have the high risk that the Adelaide Hills does. So, and it's the same with the droughts. It really they don't. I mean, whilst it may affect our yields, it doesn't affect the quality. I guess drought, when the media are talking about it on a broad scale, is more central Australia. And I guess we're, the ocean's 15 minutes from us. So, we have a little bit higher rainfall and just don't have that high risk.
Well, that makes sense. Well, Kim, I want to thank you so much for doing this. This is a treat. It's good to see you, even though it's not in person.
Yeah, but I can't wait to get back to New York.
Yeah, well, New York can't wait to have you back.
Good, thank you.
Yeah.